Today's gospel reading is on the topic of fasting. So the disciples of John the Baptist, come to our Lord and ask, why is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? And in fact, we know from the scriptures that the Pharisees fasted twice a week. In the early church, the early Christians fasted 3 times a week, and during the season of Lent, they fasted every single day. Imagine that. It's also noteworthy that all the major religions in the world practice some form of fasting. And when it comes to fasting, we might ask the question, what are the benefits to fasting, and do people enjoy fasting? I think the answer to that last question is most people do not. Most people don't willingly undertake to fast. Sometimes when they have to, because of religious precepts, they might do it. But in general, most people don't. However, a lot of people who are health conscious will practice fasting because they want the health benefits. So what are the health benefits of fasting? Well, when you fast, when you abstain from food, the organs of your body, the digestive organs, they have an opportunity to recuperate, to cleanse themselves, like your liver, whatever. It's also good for weight loss rather. So some people who want to lose weight, they might practice intermittent fasting. Health, people who are big into health, sometimes they just want to cleanse their body. They'll do a periodic fast for a few days, just maybe water or juice or whatever. So there's different ways of fasting. So there's definitely physiological benefits. It's also true that when people fast, their ability to think becomes clearer. And the way that they explain this is that, imagine in the olden days, the hunters and gatherers, that when they were hungry, their brains were very sharp so that they could track their game and hunt the game that they needed to. So it makes it easier for you to think straight. When it comes to spiritual benefits of fasting, there are quite a few, and I just want to mention a few of them. So our tendency, especially in today's modern world, especially the places where we live in North America, right? We have things at our fingertips. You could just order something online. You can even order food. You can go to the grocery store. We have a fridge to have food and cupboards, so we have all kinds of food. We have easy access to food. It's almost like we could eat whenever we want. Compare that to people who perhaps are starving, who are just having a hard time eating one decent meal a week, right? So this ability to eat whenever we want makes us selfish, and it makes it so that we have a lack of self-control. In other words, we just give in to our impulses. If we want to eat, we just give in to that desire. The problem with this is it tends to make us selfish, and so when we have other impulses, we're more likely to give in to them also. For example, to be tempted to commit sin, for example, whatever. And we have that lack of self-control. It makes us more selfish, more concerned only about ourselves, less concerned about others. So when we practice fasting, it actually helps us to overcome our selfishness. It enables us to have greater self-control, greater self-mastery, so that we can say no to the temptation to food, which also strengthens us to be able to say no to temptations in other areas of our lives. And not being as selfish can also make us more sympathetic towards others. In other words, if I experienced hunger, now a lot of people say, I'm hungry, I want some food, my stomach is growling, that's not real hunger. Real hunger is when you haven't eaten for a long time, for a few days, let's say, right? So by fasting, you can relate better to people who are perhaps deprived of food in some third world countries, which means you're going to have greater compassion for them because you understand a little bit more of their sufferings. You're able to relate more fully to their sufferings. So these are just some of the benefits. The other benefit of fasting, as I mentioned, that your mind becomes more focused from a physiological perspective. This also is true in the spiritual life. So the more we withdraw from worldly things and worldly fulfillments and satisfactions such as indulging in food, the more spiritual we become. It becomes easier for us to focus on God, to pray to God, to feel a greater connection to God. So this is a tremendous, tremendous benefit of fasting. And when it comes to praying to God, when it comes to any prayer in general, of course, we're praying to God, but we can pray for different things or different forms of prayer. But when we add sacrifice to our prayers become much more efficacious. In other words, let's just say I'm praying for the conversion of a loved one. That's good. It's beneficial. It's causing graces to flow down on that individual. But if I add some sacrifice, such as fasting, to that prayer, my prayer becomes much more efficacious, much more effective in trying to bring about the conversion of that individual. And this is also why our Lord, before he began his public ministry, he went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. He was fasting so that he would have a successful mission, so that all those who would hear his message would be converted, that they would accept his message. So we too can do this. Now notice our Lord gives the response as to why his disciples are not fasting. However, he does point out that when he is taken away from them, then they will fast. So he says, the wedding guests cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. So one of the benefits, according to our Lord, of fasting is that it will actually help us to be more united to the bridegroom, to Christ, or to God. So the reason that they're not fasting while the bridegroom is with them, it's not just because it's kind of a celebratory atmosphere, the bridegroom who's going to get married, but rather the whole purpose of the spiritual life is to get us closer to God. So prayer and fasting helps us to accomplish this goal. Practicing self-denial is very, very beneficial. Unfortunately, we're all prone to pride and selfishness. The two tend to go together. So the more that we can root out selfishness and pride at the same time, the closer we can be to God. So all these benefits to fasting, and as I mentioned, do people willingly undertake to fast? Does anybody want to fast? And often the answer is no. And why not? Because they don't perceive the fact that the benefits of fasting are so tremendously good. They don't desire that good. They prefer the good of the delight of eating, and so they don't fast. Now, in the Catholic Church, we only have to fast officially on 2 days, Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. And even the fasting that is required of us on those days is like very easy compared to like a more severe fast. So we can have one full meal and 2 other meals in such a way that those 2 meals do not add up to a full meal. So basically you're having 1 full meal and almost another full meal separated into 2 meals, and of course not to eat anything in between. So it's not that hard. But like I said, most people don't want to do this, and it's kind of unfortunate. So look at the early church. The early Christians fasted 3 times a week. The Jews, twice a week. So maybe we need to learn from them. Maybe we need to try to adopt some sort of practice like that in our own spiritual lives. I think it is true there are some people who have more difficulty fasting than others. Sometimes the type of job you have may also might be a consideration. So some people may not be able to fast because of the extra work or the physical labor that they have to do in their workplace. So something to consider. Also, just a reminder, it is the first Saturday of the month, and so ideally we want to receive Holy Communion with the intention of making reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Our Lady. And if we do this, this was revealed to the children through the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima, that whoever observes the first Saturday for 5 consecutive months, that Our Lady will assist them at the hour of death, that they will have a holy death, that they will make it to heaven, which of course we all want. The more guarantees we have for that, or the more assistance we have for that, the better, because we can't assume that we're just going to make it. So the requirements are that you go to confession. It could be 8 days before, 8 days after, or even 20 days before, 20 days after. Receive communion on that day. Make the intention to make reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Pray the Rosary, and also spend 15 minutes meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary. Not all of them necessarily. It could just be one or a number of them. And, so why does God give us this devotion? Well, partially because he wants to help us to make it to heaven, yes. But secondly, because practicing this devotion is so extremely beneficial for us, especially the meditative part. So the Rosary is meditative already to begin with, but the extra 15 minutes makes it even more beneficial for us. And I find it very good. Some people may have fulfilled their first 5 Saturday devotions already, but you can still keep doing it. You can still keep making reparation to the Immaculate Heart of our Blessed Mother.